Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Most are afraid of unknown depths, skirting shores thinking world flat, and with the island girls in celebration of new religion. Nobody led me, or said this way. I sailed alone on makeshift raft with wind as companion. Fate for deliverance, confidence enough to assess new disposition. Seekers of lost paradise may seem fools to those who never sought the other worlds. Welcome to Momentary Zen with Zen Garcia. Visit www.fallenangels.tv. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
My friends and I come from far Arden with words dangled like jewels for your careless pleasure. To tell you about the grand highway crowded with lovers and searchers and leavers, so eager to please and forget. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen here on Revolution Radio, and I thank you for taking the time to join both Kathy and I as we peruse all things esoteric and trying to help you to make sense of and understand the insanity of the world at large and um, why it is that things seemingly don't make sense in the whole as far as the new age rhetoric of our moving on to a golden age and our being at the height and the culmination of technology and advancement as far as humanity, and why is it that the world is still just split apart by wars and enmity and insanity and catastrophe and chaos? Why haven't we somehow moved on, surpassed this, um, these negative characteristics and constraints? How is it that we are continuously repeating the things that have devastated previous cultures and ages and peoples? Why haven't we learned from their mistakes, their lessons? Why are we doomed, seemingly, to continuously cycle through these endless repetitions of wars and rumors of wars? And it doesn't seem in any way to make any sense. You would think that if we are truly a wise creature and an advanced race, that we would somehow be able to go beyond, at least surpass in some way the empires that have collapsed before us. And yet, here we are, 20 some trillion dollars in debt, the infrastructure of America just collapsing, roads, bridges, the whole electrical grid, everything as far as those things which have been created and that were made so long ago in order to enable America to be what it once was. It seems like we're on the other side of the glory days, that now we are witness to the crumbling of the empire. And so, welcome everybody. It's good to see you, Sister Kathy, and Monster, Mishivu, Daku. It's been a while, brother. It's good to see you. George, I believe that's George Spain. Zippy, Mr. Rowe, always a pleasure, brother. And those that aren't in the immediate chat scroll, I know Link and Blues Girl and everybody else, Patrick, all the others that are normally here, know that, I appreciate all of you as far as the friendship and the collaboration, the welcome will and the dialogue, our introspection together as we journey into just the current events of what's going on in the world. And I know that a lot of you, like myself, you've come to conclusion in having looked into and investigated the rhetoric of this supposed new age, um, our current day and age, the conspiratorial side of what seems to be more precise as far as explaining what's going on with the world. It seems to at least strip some of the layers off of the onion in helping those of us that are truly seeking, trying to make sense of world. Um, it helps us to at least see the underpinnings, to strip away the facade and to show us the machinations, the guts and bones and marrows of the New World Order machine, the matrix that has all imprisoned to its will. And yeah, no, I don't like thinking or even considering those all of you and myself in any way as prisoners of fate, prisoners of this world and of flesh being and of this visible third dimensional reality, this simulatrix, as my friend Professor Truth calls it. But I mean, that's what it is. I mean, if you really look into how things are, it seems like we are incarnated into flesh form, which is a fallen way of being, and that we are placed, we are living in a world that is controlled by powers, principalities, the rulers of darkness, this wickedness in high places, these archonic interdimensional entities, which, like Oz behind the mask and from the shadows, seems to be pulling the strings and playing most as pawns on what is the chessboard of life and being. And even though we believe we are the determiners of our own fate, destiny, and design, it seems like there is a larger and deeper aspect to our being here, and that the whole role of humanity, the whole design, the whole purpose and reason for all of our being here over the thousands of years, at least the last 6,000, for the modern creation of going back to Adam and Eve and the fall of humanity and our emplacement into this world that it seems like we're at the end game, and that things are accelerating to such degree that, I mean, it really seems like anything could just set the whole thing afire, could bring the dominoes tumbling down. Because I believe, we're at critical mass. Like, how much longer, how much further are they going to allow the debt of America to continue unencumbered? I mean, and how much more are the American people going to take with, schools and education and everything faltering? We don't even have good health care here. And most people, if you have some kind of devastating diagnosis to your life, that's the end of normality. That would be the um the end of what's going on as far as what we see happening around us. And so, how much longer will the Ponzi scheme continue? That's the question. Um, Hello, Zaphod and Dharma, Heather, Skywalker, Comfortably Numb, Monster Up, and everybody else. And so, I- I'm I'm just, this is not even the topic for the evening. This evening, I wanted to talk about the various layers and levels of what are the upper heavens in relation to the various different patriarchs and prophets that have been taken up into them and brought before the Most High God, that I wanted to share some insight into that as topic and subject, since people are asking me about it. But I can't just ignore, what's going on in the world. We got the whole dog and pony show of the two-party system and the electoral process, which, for those of you that have invested a lot of time and effort into all of that, um, I mean, if you haven't even figured out that that is all just an illusion, that we don't have truly any part or any say in who gets elected or even who really is paraded before us as candidate. It's that in of itself is sad, that most people actually believe and still think that, we're a republic, or even a democracy, even though we weren't created as a democracy. We're created as a republic where the supposed representatives are supposed to, you know, um, represent the will of the people, one person, one vote, which that's all just an illusion. Even the electoral college and all of that, I mean, there is no popular vote. Um, and then you have things like we had talked about not even long ago. We did a show, Welcome Link and Brother Chairbear and Blasphemous. Um, we did a show, I think it was last Tuesday or 2 Tuesdays ago. I'm a guest host. I'm a guest on brother Kenneth's show where we do roundtable, and Kathy's with us, and Jackie and Charles. Um, and we discussed different topics. And last week we were talking about the narrow window that we are in right now, from that stretches from April 19th through the 1st of May, May Day, and how this is the couple of weeks where the dark side, the forces, the pagans and the Luciferians, the Satanists, where they celebrate and honor their God in blood sacrifice. And it wasn't just a couple days after that we had the whole thing with Prince, and with that woman China, the Wrestling WWE wrestler. Um, and it wasn't surprising at all to me that there was some big name, what I consider to be absolutely blood sacrifice occurring. And then when you do some investigation into all of that, it seems like the Prince had been in a battle, a long term, almost a 2 decade battle with the his the music company that held his contract, and that he was hoarding his music and the work that he was doing so as to not put it out underneath their labels, and so that he wouldn't be taken advantage of in the way that a lot of these artists are. And not just artists, all of us, that we are all taken advantage of by the forces of darkness. I mean, just the fact that we use Federal Reserve currency, which is backed by nothing, and which they simply just print and then loan it to our government and to the American people and to the world, based on the goodwill and faith of the American people. And it has no real worth. It's backed by nothing of value. And the Federal Reserve System, the central banking system, is nothing but a very giant and elaborate Ponzi scheme. And they create their wealth out of thin air and then fund the wars which devastate the peoples of the world, and which create scarcity and cause this divide between the have-nots and the haves. And it's all just a dog and pony show again. It's a parlor trick. It's Satan basically using an illusion, a parlor trick, to deceive and manipulate the whole world. And it shows really how stupid we are, that even though we know the Federal Reserve is, and we've known this for a very long time, um, that it's not a governmental agency, and that it you know, it's basically been given through the Federal Reserve Act the authority, which is unconstitutional, absolutely unconstitutional, the authority to, you know, regulate the monetary wealth and the debt and the currency and commerce of America. And that since the passing of the Federal Reserve Act, and since they have been able to snowball the whole world with their schemes. I mean, that's the whole reason why we had these world wars. I mean, look at the dating, the time. The Federal Reserve Act is passed in 1913. They create our debt and then have Americans pay taxes just to pay the interest down on debt, on this accumulated debt. And then they use this wealth that they've been creating, that they just all of a sudden, created out of thin air. They use this real wealth to then purchase, hoard, and buy up all the real assets of the world. And then, basically cornering the markets on everything, on all the real assets, on all the real world goods and commodities. They then use those things in order to drive and create division, to fund the manipulation and the creation of minorities, to create strife and enmity amongst peoples, and then to instigate and conflagrate and to um, incite these divisions and these enmities, these feuds, fueling them into grand wars, into armed struggle, where you have people literally killing each other over differences of ideology or whatever is utilized as the catalyst for creating and stoking those divisions. And they are good at it. Which is why, in the scriptures, there's so much warning, and as far as against usury and loaning money out at interest. And has Satan not utilized the creation of wealth and then lending it at interest to peoples? This single enterprise has accumulated enough wealth for the dark side and those that serve it to basically subjugate in bondage all the peoples of the world. And so you have these sons of Cain, because that's what it is. Absolutely. Those who say they are Jews but are not. I mean, the scripture is precise in every way in telling us who is waging war against us and has been since the very birth of the two bloodlines here upon the planet, or upon the plane, excuse me. And so, um, yeah, and whereas the sons of Adam have forgotten and no longer remember the story, the origin of this war, and whereas they can't remember or are not able to grasp how the garden parable connects to the birth of these two bloodlines, and how Eve's eating of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, how it absolutely is linked to this war that continues and rages on even to this day. And how this all ties back to what I was talking about initially at the very beginning of how we are not able to bring peace and goodwill and humanity, um, goodwill to all the peoples of the world everywhere. It's because there's this other bloodline that is hiding in the shadows and ruling from the shadows will not allow things to be good. They don't want it good. They don't care anything about goodwill and um, hopes and dreams and um, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness for everybody. No, they want rape, pillage, plunder, control, um, rulership, and control, rule by impunity. Um, to They want blood. They want to see the people bleed. They want to be able to, you know, take children and have sex with them, or to murder innocents, or to create pain just because they get off on that kind of thing. They want to be able to force people to do things against their will just because they enjoy. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody. And so I will go into the topic of discussion, but I think I can probably cover what I want to talk about in like an hour. So I'm just going to kind of continue on this rant for a little bit because I think it's important. I mean, these things need to be said. And when you like, and I know this is probably the same for all of you, that when you go to talk to your friends and your family, your loved ones, people that you really care about, and that you try to help them to wake up to these things, to because I mean these things are important. The fact that we, as somebody said in the chat room, that the whole monetary system was spellcraft. I mean, and absolutely, that's exactly what it is. It's all just an illusion. It's an elaborate Ponzi scheme. It's Satan hoodwinking us, and it's so important because it's still ongoing. And as long as the powers, the principalities, these rulers of darkness, as long as that whole monetary system is in play in the way that it is, then they are going to continue to, well, number one, destroy America from the inside out and divert the wealth, the power, and the prestige of this nation, and we as a once great people, to those bastions of atheism, the real temples of Baal, which are the communist countries that have been established, created, and put into place in order to receive the power and the blessings and the graces that we had once shared. And all of that money, all of that wealth, all of the manufacturing base, the ability to generate the wealth is being diverted to places like China and Russia and Abu Dhabi and you know places like that, where they, like in China, they can basically lock you up as a political prisoner. And then if your organs happen to match um, somebody's on, a list that decides to pay for a new heart or pay for a new organ or something in that way, well then, you're basically going to be killed in order to provide that as a service to the rich, the elite over there. And here in America, at least they have to lie to us and say that, oh, you're brain dead, or, you have what's called non-beating heart death, or you're in a coma. And they do, for these for-profit hospitals. And they, it's not the people or the families that benefit in any way. And they've tricked most of Americans to be organ donors. And then if you are an organ donor, and especially if you are a young person that happens to be in an accident or something, and this just happened not even long ago to one of my friends, and I didn't even have the heart to tell her the truth because her family had already decided to take her cousin off of life support and to donate her organs to, all those that are on the list that would benefit. And just as they do in many other cases and have in many other times, um, they lied to her family and, basically said she was in a coma and she was brain dead and that she would never come out of it. And they do that to a lot of families every day. But what they don't tell you, and what most of you organ donors don't know, is that all of the so-called brain deaths or persistent vegetative states or whatever definition that they tell you where you're supposedly dead, you're not dead. You're far from dead. In fact, many people that don't listen to the doctors and that choose to continue life support and to wait a while for the, to see how their family members actually will fare, they'll come out of it and they'll be perfectly fine. Perfectly fine, like nothing had happened. And yet the doctors and the hospitals had told the families, like a week earlier, oh, they're brain dead, they're never going to come out of it, you might as well just donate their organs, at least make something good of it. But what they also don't tell you is that the hospitals will make, hello Zipster, will make up to $2 million on one person, on delving out the organs of one individual. And so it's big money for them. And certainly they'll make probably 4 or 5 times the money that they would have made in saving your life and actually providing you, care to preserve your life. Because it's not about that. It's about making money. It's a for-profit institution. And so this is another one of those, spellcraft, basically having America's hoodwinked. And so this kind of thing is going on every day in America across, all of these different hospices and for-profit hospitals. And, they're doing this also to the elderly and the disabled and those that have what are called living wills, which if you have a living will, get rid of it right now because All a living will does is prevent you from getting any kind of what's called heroic measures, uh, any kind of real care, like even a feeding tube or antibodies or anything of that nature. And also, it protects the doctors in the hospitals from being um, being excuse me, and being sued for causing your death. Because a living will, when you when you actually do the research and look into euthanasia, it was the right to die groups that drafted the living will. And they did that as a way to procure organs for organ donation and also to um, cause death and to protect the doctors and the nurses and the hospitals from being sued when they actually follow through with your living will. That if you truly want to protect your life and you want to ensure that the doctors can't starve and dehydrate you to death, because that's what they're doing. They're giving a lot of people, um, they're giving them pain medicine and just starving and dehydrating them until until they die or they succumb to death. But for those that are organ donors, what really kills you is them taking your organs. That's what kills you. Not that you're actually dead or brain death or, they put you into a coma. And a lot of times they won't even give you pain medicine for the, you know, for the procurement of your organs because they don't want to cause any destruction to the organs that they cherish and which they're going to be selling to some person or hospital somewhere else. And so when they cut into you, your blood pressure will rise and your body will freak out because, basically you're being murdered. And if you do not believe what I'm saying, just look up uh, warning, and because I've written about this in great detail. Warnings to America on organ donation. I wrote several articles about this many years back when I first learned about it. But anyways, and so um, there's a lot that's going on in the world that we just don't know. And because you don't know, you're being tricked, and we're all living in this system where we're being taken advantage of in every way. I mean, healthcare is not even a right, which is so odd when you look at the countries of the world, how Americans are supposedly being the richest nation, the greatest nation in the world, and yet they don't provide universal health care for all of the citizens. Yeah, our healthcare system is great for those that can afford it. And that to me is so backward. And yet there's still all these people that are flooding into our country thinking that, this is still the American dream and that this is the place to be. And it doesn't seem like that so much anymore, which is sad because, this country has such potential. And if we, instead of having to pay down this insane interest on this insane amount of debt, just think of the billions of dollars that, and I believe this is, at least daily, the billions of dollars that are being wasted just paying down the interest on the debt, not even applied in any way to the principal, not in any way shrinking or bringing down or, you know, making in any way a dent into the accumulation of our debt, but just the billions of dollars that are wasted and that are squandered daily, just paying down interest on the debt. Think of how much money and how much good could be done with that money. And it's crazy because they also report that the Pentagon, the Pentagon squanders. I can't remember exactly if it was billions. Yeah, I think it was billions. How every year from the Pentagon budget, there's like $8 billion missing. It might even be more than that. I can't remember the exact details, but it just seems so insane to me that there's no accountability. There's nobody screaming, foul. There's nobody saying anything and nobody gets in trouble. It's like nobody gets fired. Um, I remember during the Bush administration when there was this one woman that had reported to the press because she couldn't get her bosses to do anything, and she was talking about how Halliburton was receiving these no bid contracts, military contracts for huge amounts of money, and when they could have hired other people for, you know, much cheaper, and that they weren't even getting competitive bids, and that it was, in the as far as the protocols, that they were supposed to get multiple bids and then go with, the lowest bidder. But yet none of that was happening. And when this came out in the press, she got fired. She lost her job. And the whole buddy system just continued as it had, and nothing ever happened to Halliburton or its connections to Dick Cheney, and that he had worked for them prior to becoming the vice president. I mean, it's just ridiculous, and so I guess really we deserve every bit of what we get, but it's still very sad, especially for those of us like myself that know about these things and that try to talk about it to others, especially our loved ones, and how so many just don't care. They just don't care. As long as they can tune into their favorite basketball game, or, continue to watch their favorite sport on TV, and as long as they can, come home and heat up their favorite TV dinner and turn on their computers and browse the internet and watch their, whatever it is, everything's fine. As long as it just, continues to perpetuate itself for one more day, everything is fine. But, at some point it won't. And by that time, things are going to be so bad so just messed up and so upside down that when it finally gives way and when they are finally able to bring it to collapse in the extreme manner that they are hoping to, things will never be the same again. And I pray, I pray daily that we never reach that point, that I never have to see this in my lifetime. But do I believe that, we can go on much longer? No. Do I think that we've got even a decade, 5 years? No. 5 years? Maybe. Doubtful. Who knows? I really don't know. Um, I'm not a date setter, and I'm not one of those that, focuses on the doom and gloom. I'm not one that likes to give my energy to negative thoughts and to perpetuate or to manifest those kind of things. I acknowledge them, certainly, but I don't dwell on them. And I certainly don't want to have any part in creating calamity in that manner. And, so yes, I warn people about those things, but I'm not chicken little. I'm not running around daily with my, screaming, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. I try to do everything I can to encourage people and help them to understand the gospel, because in my opinion these things are every way prophetically interwoven and divinely inspired and written into the word of God. And that when you really understand what is talked about and what is portrayed and what is revealed therein, and I'm not just talking about the canonical texts, I'm not just talking about the 66 book Old and New Testament, I'm talking about the Gospels, which include many extra biblical, extra canonical texts, specifically and certainly like Jasher, Jubilees, and the Book of Enoch. But I consider many others inspired, as I talked about in the show that I did on the forgotten, forbidden, and um, eradicated books of the Bible and other, you know, like the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Nag Hammadi collection, and how I listed so many texts, and yet there's been thousands, if not tens of thousands, that were once available to us that have been eradicated, disappeared. And that in itself is sad. And that's why I try to cling to and learn and read and study all that we do have available to us, because it's never been like this. Humanity and the masses, what they call us, as the useless eaters, we've never had access to knowledge in the manner that we do now. All right, we'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody. I do want to, I'll tell you about a different way that people can support Revolution Radio, which also benefits the various hosts. And um, you can also go to freedomslips.com and you can look up the schedule of the different people that come on both Studio A and Studio B. And if you are interested in listening to a lot of these different individuals, and maybe some of these people come on at a time when you are either asleep or, going to work, or for whatever reason you're not able to catch them. One of the good ways to that is really beneficial for you is to purchase access to the archives. Now, this doesn't benefit the various hosts, but I mean, for the price of a Happy Meal, over the course of 1 month, you can, you know, gain access to all of the shows that are done and that have been done going back to the beginning of last year or the year before, I believe. And that when, because all of the shows used to be streamed to YouTube and made available in that way. And that, when people watched them, clicked on the links, that was in a way to support Revolution Radio, because, the um, of the AdSense stuff that came to Nighthawk, but they deleted the account there, and we lost a lot of shows. Like, I know personally myself, I don't know, a good 30 or 40 shows. Um, and for those that have been here and have been hosting on Revolution Radio for even longer, I can't even imagine how many shows and how many awesome interviews were just simply, you know, up in smoke when that occurred. And so since that time, they've been archiving him in a different place, and so people can purchase access in that way. And then there's also, if you have a favorite host and you want all of their shows downloaded to CD, then you can request that and it will be made for you. Sister Ruth and Stephanie, really good to see both of you. I'm glad that y'all were able to join us. You'll definitely want to catch the archives, because I kind of went on a rant for the first hour, and I think it would be beneficial to hear it. Also think it would be good to share with others, because we're to the point where the hour is late and things can't go on as they are for very much longer. But anyways, what I was saying about you know requesting a data disk, just contact Nighthawk, freedomslips.com. Those of you that can, click on the donate button and share what you can. Price of a Happy Meal. I mean, it helps the station continue doing what we do, and we appreciate all of you, and the ability to use this as platform for reaching others and sharing. Um, even like the all that I've been talking about this evening. Welcome, Jazz. Hope you are doing well, sister, and I hope that your new job and everything is going well as well, and that life finds you blessed and of good health. And all of you, know that I appreciate all of you and the friendship that we share. And so this evening, I'm going to go into also those of you that were able to celebrate Passover this past weekend. I hope that went well for you. And also, Stephanie, will talk very soon, sister. It's been a very, very busy week for me. But a lot of good things happening. I'm getting a lot of progress done on um, some of the books that I'm working on, which I don't know if I told um, you know those of you that are interested. I'm working on a book on the dome, the firmament, and then I will also work on the Thracian Chronicles, all that is currently being looked into. I provided the translations over to the bishops of the Thracian Church and also to Dr. Stephen Guide's brother. And so that is, they're looking over mine and Alexander's translations right now. And then after we uh, settle with them on how to progress, we're going to make those available to the public. And I'm really excited about that. But it does look like it's going to happen. And so, as soon as we can, look for the first 3 books of the Thracian Chronicles, which, you know what, I'm going to share with you before I get into this other material. I'm going to share with you some of these, the names of some of these texts, and you're just going to be blown away. Because I've had those of you that are interested in the Thracian Chronicles, you've asked me about what they are and what the specifics are in what we're going to be releasing and what we're working towards. And so I posed that question to my friend uh, Alexander, who is from Sweden and who has been working on these texts. So let me see if I can find it really quick. And if I can find it, I'll read you the specifics because it is it's absolutely, I'm so excited to get and read some of these texts. I hope I can find the list. Because as I said, the information is so ready to get into and to translate. And I just want to read them, myself. I just want to be able to read them, but to be able to work on them and to translate them. Let me just, if I can't find it, I'll let me look at what some of the my email archives. I don't know why I can't find this, but anyways, the the texts that are part of and what I will be working on, I'm just so excited to even be able to read them. And so, some of them, well, I can tell you 2 or 3 of them right now, which are, first you have, the Book of Adam and Ua, and the Chronicles of Longinus, and then the Chronicles of Navi. Those are going to be the 3 that we are hoping to bundle and to release and make available to the public as soon as we can. And then the others that I have heard of are called the books of the Acts of Andrew and the book of the Acts of Maximilia. And I asked Alexander who Maximilia is, and from what I understand, she was like a female apostle. And so these two books, haven't read them yet, but when they're translated, I'm really looking forward to reading those. And we'll be releasing these at a later time. But then there's another one that I know of for sure. It's called the Chronicles of the Apostle Luke, and I'm really excited to get that one, because I think that is just going to be mind blowing to be able to read that. And who knows what kind of information it's going to cover. I don't understand why I can't find the full list. It's making me mad because I wanted to share that with you. Oh well. I thought I had it saved here, but it doesn't look like I do. And so, anyways, well, I'm going to go ahead and get into the topic of discussion for this evening. I wanted to share with you some information on the 10 heavens. And when I talk about the 10 heavens in the study that I've been doing, because this will be a part of the book that I'm currently working on. And most everybody knows about like the three heavens. There's a passage in Chronicles or Corinthians. Let me read it really quick. I'll try to get the list and I'll read the list of all of the Thracian Chronicles, all the texts that make up the Thracian Chronicles, and I'll share them with you on the next show. Which next Wednesday we're gonna have Peter Moon joining us and talking about like time portals and also the Basiji Mountain. The I've read from that text where I talked about the discovery in the interior of that mountain of what seems to be a base that was set up by giants, and it's has high technology, and so we're going to get deeper into that story with Peter Moon next week. And then also we're going to have Gary Wayne joining us. And God bless my friend George, who's been acting on my behalf to set up interviews with people because I never have the time or really take the time to do that kind of thing. But he's heard back from individuals like Mike Heiser and Chuck Missler and Brad Steger, and so we're gonna have them coming on as well at some point. And so it's gonna be interesting to do those shows and to speak with some of these people. But going back into because when you study about the upper heavens, it seems like there are accounts such as the book of the secrets of Enoch, which is better known as Second Enoch, and the ascension of Isaiah, and the apocalypse and the vision of Paul. The apocalypse of Paul and the vision of Paul. They're two different texts, but they're similar. The apocalypse of Peter and the apocalypse of Zephaniah. All of these texts make mention of and describe the various levels of heaven, from the lower heavens, which are ruled over by the rebel angels and the fallen angels, and that of the upper heavens, where only the angels of the Most High, the archangels, are allowed to go. And that at the very apex, the very zenith of all of these various levels and layers of heaven, you have the throne of the Most High God, and that he sits atop the firmament, and that it seems that the solid structure of the firmament, as a sea of glass, or as what is referenced in scripture as the vaulted dome of the earth, that it spreads out from the throne of God and encompasses the earth, encapsulates it, and um, it divides the waters above from the waters below. And actually, this Tuesday, we will be having a round table on the seventh show that we together will be doing, me and Kathy and Kenneth and Jackie um, and Charles. the roundtables that we've been doing over there at The Time Is Now, which is under Kenneth Beer's Bro Ken on Blog Talk. But anyways, we're going to be doing a show on the firmament this upcoming Tuesday. So you can go to Tribulation Now, which is Kathy's Facebook page, and there will be links to it. And also on my Facebook page, there will be a link to the show prior to our actually doing it. But this is a very interesting topic for a lot of people, and I know that once I understood it in this manner, in the way that I do now, that in reading scripture, a lot of scripture, that it made so much more sense to me in what seemed to be only metaphorical, um, rel, the scriptures relating metaphorically what the throne of God looked like, and you know the cherubim and the seraphim and the Ophanim angels as being and surrounding him, and also the saints of God. That these saints of God are also considered to be um, with the Most High God and surrounding him and singing praise unto him. And so I'm going to read some excerpts from both the book of the Secrets of Enoch and also that of the Ascension of Isaiah in order to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. Um, but for those that don't know about the 10 heavens, and if you want to know more, certainly read those two texts in their entirety. They are amazing. They're two of my most favorites. And they give you an idea in greater detail and expounded upon more so than any of the other extra biblical or canonical texts. There's no other text which relate in detail the nature, the structure, the form, and what resides at each of these levels of heaven. And whereas, for people that are only King James Version students and only canonical readers, you only know about three heavens. And it's basically the same structure, the three heavens. But when you study these other texts, those three divisions of heaven and what is referenced as the three heavens, they actually have more layers and levels to them. And in each case, whether the story is relating in apportioning to the upper heavens, 3 levels or 7 levels, or referencing 10 heavens, all of them in structure are the same. They speak about the same thing. The throne of God sits atop the firmament and the very center, and the temple of the Most High is therein. And that Solomon's temple and the Ark of Noah, um, these structures, all of them also represent and show the Ark of the Covenant. All of them relate in the same minute fashion these three divisions. And canonical, as I said, canonical students are familiar with these three divisions, but I'll read the passage from Corinthians, which most people are familiar with in regard to the third heaven, because it's at the third heaven that paradise and the tree of life and um, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, that this is where Adam and Eve fell from, that they weren't on the earth until after their exile and their transformation into flesh, which I detail in both of my books, Lucifer, Father of Cain, my fourth book, and also my sixth book, Sons of God, Who We Are and Why We're Here. Now, as far as the things that I spoke about and covered in the first hour with the with the long rants that I, basically went on. You can find a lot of that information in my fifth book, Awaken to the New World Order. And I know I don't speak about my books enough, that a lot of people that are, new listeners, they listen to my shows, they don't even have any idea that I've written any books, just because I don't talk about them very often. And so they're surprised, when they discover that I've written nine, nine of them so far, and I'm working on my 10th one. And so, and people, a lot individuals like myself that like to have all these source references in print form and like to be able to follow up and go and read them for themselves. They like books. I like books, even though, this is a generation that mostly does not like to read, and that only likes to watch a 10-minute YouTube clip. And if you can't tell them in 10 minutes what they need to know, I mean, you lost them, I mean, this is a ADD, ADHD, short-term memory type of generation. And um, a lot of kids don't study anything. They don't read anything unless it's like video games or, something that interests them, which, if you ask most children or most teenagers, they don't have a whole lot of interest in the Bible. And so, the passage that I'm going to read before break, it says, I know a man in Christ who 14 years ago was caught up to the third heaven. Whether it was in the body or out of the body, I do not know. God knows, and I know that this man, whether in the body or apart from the body, I do not know. But God knows, was caught up to paradise and heard inexpressible things, things that no one is permitted to tell. And what Paul is referencing in this particular passage, when you read the vision of Paul and the apocalypse of Paul, these two books, the vision of Paul has more detail in it about paradise and Sheol and the divisions between the righteous and the wicked than any other text that I've ever read. And so it's intriguing, um, just for that. And so when we return, I will talk more about the, the various 10 heavens, and share and relate with you the direct testament of both Isaiah and Enoch, who, everybody knows that Enoch was taken up into heaven, but not a lot of people realize that Isaiah was as well, and that Isaiah was taken up and brought before the throne of God and saw and watched Yeshua descend, and that he was going to be placed into the body of a virgin. And he saw in vision all of that, and how Christ would be born of a virgin and named Emmanuel. All right, we'll be right back. All right, I'm going to mention those texts one more time, um, since Link had asked about them in the chat room. For those that want to know more about the 10 heavens, you can study the book of the Secrets of Enoch, the Ascension of Isaiah, the Apocalypse of Paul, the Apocalypse of Peter, the Vision of Paul, and the Apocalypse of Zephaniah. All of them are very interesting texts. All right, and so let me find my place here. When you read through the various accounts, and I'm not going to start because they're very long, it would take me probably an hour or 2 hour show just to read the testimonies. And just from um, Isaiah and Enoch, because as I said, those two texts detail and elaborate in greater manner on the various levels of heaven, more so than any other text and anywhere else that you can find. But in reading about the firmament, or right above the firmament, it's listed as the first heaven, and then you have, leading up to the fifth heaven, you have what are the angels on the left, which are the fallen angels, the rebel angels, and the angels on the right, which are the angels of the Most High. And the angels of the Most High are found and present at every level going up. And then there's a throne and a particular person that manages each layer, each level of the various heavens. And you have to have a certain password in order to go by and to either ascend or descend um, through these various portals. And it's my opinion that the ladder of Jacob, what he had seen, was tied to and connected to the whole idea of the what is described here in both Enoch and Isaiah's vision of these 10 heavens. And actually, I think next week I will share with you a text called the Ladder of Jacob, which describes what I'm talking about this evening. And it's kind of a short text. I'm pretty sure I would be able to cover it in 1 2 hour show, and it's one that not a lot of people know about. Certainly, not a lot of people have read it or heard about it, and it's not available on the internet or in when you search it out. Not a lot of people have even written anything about it or made mention of it at all. But I have it as part of one of my huge compendiums. I have these very thick 700, 800 page books that have all of these extra biblical texts in them. And it's in one of those. And I photocopied it and uploaded it to my computer. So I'll share it with you next week. It's going to be part of the book that I'm working on as well. But located at the third heaven, you have in detail both paradise, the place of the righteous, and the place of the wicked. Then you have in between a great ocean called the Arturian Lake, and it's this gulf that divides. The when we had the whole picture of the rich man crying out to Lazarus from Abraham's bosom. This is the image. This is the what is described as being on the third heaven, and that the place of the righteous and the place of the wicked is also um, connected to the throne room of God in varying degree. All right, let me skip to where I need to be. The fourth heaven is attributed to being the tabernacle for the sun and the moon and stars, the stars of heaven. And it's interesting to me also that in the account of Enoch that it speaks about these stars as being uh, co- connected to the the understructure of the dome, which is strange. The firmament, but we know that they were entered into the firmament, and that the firmament was established as divide for the waters above and the waters below. All right, skipping, the fifth heaven is the highest heaven um, for the fallen ones, and this is the seat of power and where the, if you can say, throne, sort of, where the Satan now, Samael, the angel of death. Um, it's the highest location and place that the fallen ones can go. And that leading up to the fifth heaven, there are angels on the left, which are representative of the rebel angels, and angels on the right, which are representative of the angels of the Most High. And that once you get to the sixth heaven is said to be in the Gnostic text, um, the divide, the separation, that the angels, the lower angels in, of the visible world, that they can no longer go, they cannot exceed beyond that point, beyond the fifth heaven, and that the sixth heaven and upward are reserved only for the angels of the Most High. All right, and I'll read something from the book of the Secrets of Enoch in connection to these. It says this: these are the Grigori who, with their prince Satanel, rejected the Lord of Light, and after them are those who are held in great darkness on the second heaven. And three of them went down on earth from the Lord's throne to the place Hermon, and broke through their vows on the shoulder of the hill of Hermon, and saw the daughters of men, how good they are, and took themselves wives, and befouled the earth with their deeds, who in all times of their age made lawlessness and mixing, and giants are born, and marvelous big men, and great enmity. And therefore God judged them with great judgment, and they weep for their brethren, and they will be punished on the Lord's great day. Um, I'll read just a little bit from the Ascension of Isaiah concerning the fifth heaven. And then I'm going to continue up the sixth and the seventh, and I'll read those portions. The Ascension of Isaiah. And I praised him who is not named, and the only begotten, who dwelleth in the heavens, whose name is not known to any flesh, who has bestowed such glory on the several heavens, and who makes great the glory of the angels, and more excellent the glory of him who sitteth on the throne. Now we get to the sixth heaven. And as I said, this is reserved only for the angels of the Most High, and Enoch describes it as such. And thence those men took me and bore me up to the sixth heaven, and there I saw seven bands of angels, very bright and very glorious, and their faces shining more than the sun shining, glistening, and there is no difference in their faces or behavior or manner of dress, and these make the orders and learn the goings of the stars, and the alteration of the moon or revelation of the sun, and the good government of the world. And when they see evil doings, they make commandments and instruction, and sweet and loud singing, and all the songs of praise. These are the archangels, the ruling angels, who are above angels, and measure all life in heaven and on earth, and the angels who are appointed over seasons and years, and over the fruits of the earth, and the angels who are over every grass, giving food to all, to every living thing, and the angels who write all the souls of men and all their deeds and their lives before the Lord's face. Okay, I'm going to read just a little bit from the Ascension of Isaiah on the sixth heaven. He says this: from the sixth heaven there are no longer angels on the left, nor a throne set in the midst, but they are directed by the power of the seventh heaven, where dwelleth he that is not named, and the elect one, whose name has not been made known, and none of the heavens can learn his name. Um, This is an interesting part, so I'll read this too. Okay. For it has been permitted to thee in the lot of the Lord to come hither. And from thence comes the power of the sixth heaven and of the air. And I magnified my Lord with praise, in that through his lot I should come hither. And he said, Hear, furthermore, therefore, this also from thy fellow servant. When from the body by the will of God thou hast ascended hither, then thou wilt receive the garment which thou seest, and likewise other numbered garments laid up there thou wilt see. And then thou wilt become equal to the angels of these seven heaven. And so they're talking about our glorified body. And remember how I say that we pre existed and that we are all attempting, like Christ said, remember from whence thou art fallen, do the first works, that we're all trying to have a return to our first estate, and that when we do so, that we will be equal to the angels in heaven, and that in our glorified being we will be restored to our bright nature, our immortal status as angelic beings. Well, that's what this text is also talking about. All right, continuing, I'm going to skip down to the seventh heaven. And I think this passage from Enoch is, I mean, it describes in every way how one should feel when being brought before the Lord. I mean, Enoch is squeamish. He just is, he's scared beyond death, you know, in being brought before the face of the Lord. And his description of this moment, this feeling is just, it's priceless. So I'll read this. Hence they took Enoch into the seventh heaven. And those two men lifted me up thence onto the seventh heavens, and I saw there a very great light and fiery troops of great archangels, incorporated forces and dominions, orders and governments, cherubim and seraphim, thrones and many-eyed ones, 9 regiments, the Ionite stations of light, and I became afraid and began to tremble with great terror. And those men took me and led me after them, and said to me, Have courage, Enoch, do not fear, and showed me the Lord from afar, sitting on his very high throne. For what is there on the 10th heaven, since the Lord dwells there? On the 10th heaven is God in the Hebrew tongue. He is called Aravat, the Father of creation. And all the heavenly troops would come and stand on the 10 steps according to their rank, and would bow down to the Lord, and would again go to their places in joy and felicity, singing songs in the boundless light with small and tender voices, gloriously serving him. Of how the angels here left Enoch at the end of the seventh heaven, and went away from him unseen. And the cherubim and the seraphim standing about the throne, the 6 winged and many eyed ones, do not depart, standing before the Lord's face, doing his will, and cover his whole throne, singing with gentle voice before the Lord's face. Holy, 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 Lord, ruler of Sabaoth. Heavens and earth are full of your glory. When I saw these things, those men said to me, Enoch, thus far is it commanded us to journey with you. And those men went away from me, and thereupon I saw them not. And I remained alone at the end of the seventh heaven, and became afraid, and fell on my face, and said to myself, Woe is me! What has befallen me? And the Lord sent one of his glorious ones, the archangel Gabriel, one of the 7 highest angels, and he said to me, Have courage, Enoch, do not fear. Arise before the Lord's face into eternity. Arise, come with me. And I answered him and said in myself, My Lord, my soul is departed from me, from terror and trembling. And I called to the men who led me up to this place. On them I relied, and it was with them I go before the Lord's face. And Gabriel caught me up as a leaf caught up by the wind, and placed me before the Lord's face. All right. Just a little bit from the Ascension of Isaiah because I want to be able to get to the last part. And he who permitted thee is thy Lord God, the Lord Christ, who will be called Jesus in the world, but his name thou canst not hear till thou hast ascended out of thy body. And he raised me up into the seventh heaven, and I saw there a wonderful light and angels innumerable. And there I saw the holy Abel and all the righteous. And there I saw Enoch and all who were with him stripped of the garments of the flesh, and I saw them in their garments of the upper world, and they were like angels, standing there in great glory. And he said unto me, crowns and thrones of glory they do not receive until the beloved will descend in the form in which you will see him. Descent will into the world in the last days, the Lord who will be called Christ. And the God of that world will stretch forth his hand against the Son, and they will crucify him on a tree and will slay him, not knowing who he is. And thus his descent, as you will see, will be hidden even from the heavens, so that it will not be known who he is. And when he hath plundered the angel of death, he will ascend to the on the third day, and he will remain in that world 545 days. And then many of the righteous will ascend with him, whose spirits do not receive their garments till the Lord Christ ascend, and they ascend with him. And then indeed they will receive their garments and thrones and crowns when he has ascended into the seventh heaven. All right. I think this will be the last portion that I will read, and then we'll end in commentary. All right. This is the last portion is from the book of Enoch. It describes the eighth heaven, eighth through the 10th heaven. It says this. And I saw the eighth heaven, which is called in the Hebrew tongue Muzalath, changer of the seasons of drought and of wet, and the 12 constellations of the circle of the firmament, which are above the seventh heaven. And so it's interesting to me that it's described the constellations, um, which revolve and rotate around Polaris, the zodiac, that they are mentioned in this text as being above the firmament. Because in Genesis, it makes mention that these stars, the sun, the moon, the planets, they're placed within the firmament, and that the firmament that I'm referencing, specifically as the vaulted dome of the earth, that the Most High's throne sits on top of that dome, and that the ground is the sea of glass. And so, I don't really know how to um, what do I make of this? And this gives us something to think about, because in the waters above, if the constellations are indeed above the throne of God, and then are they outside of the firmament? But then it says that, well, also, this is another thing too, just brainstorming here. It mentions that there are 7 levels of the firmament, and that the moon and the sun, they're on different levels, the planets are on different levels, and that the stars, and in fact the zodiac and the constellations, are also on different levels of the same firmament, because they all rotate together in synchronous movement. And so I don't know, just something to think about. And so, finishing up, and I saw the ninth heaven, which is called in the Hebrew Kuchavim, where are the heavenly homes of the 12 constellations of the circle of the firmament. And in the 10th heaven, the archangel Michael led Enoch to before the Lord's face. Okay, so they are below. In this text, the Most High is in the 10th heaven, which would make sense. Okay, so it all makes sense. To before the Lord's face on the 10th heaven, which is called Aravath. I saw the appearance of the Lord's face like iron made to glow in fire, and brought out emitting sparks, and it burns. Thus, in a moment of eternity, I saw the Lord's face, but the Lord's face is ineffable, marvelous, and very awful, and very, very terrible. And who am I to tell of the Lord's unspeakable being and of his very wonderful face? And I cannot tell the quantity of his many instructions and various voices. The Lord's throne is very great and not made with hands, nor the quantity of those standing round him, troops of cherubim and seraphim, nor their incessant singing, nor his immutable beauty. And who shall tell of the ineffable greatness of his glory? The Book of the Secrets of Enoch, chapter 21 through 22. And so there you have it at the 10th heaven, which I was thinking of, his being brought before him on the 7th heaven, but then, it makes sense that the firmament is below the throne of God, before the Most High God sitting on his throne. And so, yeah, it all makes sense and it all connects together and it all ties into what is supposed New Age, um, our current day and age, the conspiratorial side of what seems to be more precise as far as explaining what's going on with world. It seems to at least strip some of the layers off of the onion in helping those of us that are truly seeking, trying to make sense of world. Um, it helps us to at least see the underpinnings, to strip away the facade and to show us the machinations, the guts and bones and marrows of the New World Order machine, the Matrix that has all imprisoned to its will. And yeah, no, I don't like thinking or even considering those, all of you and myself, in any way as prisoners of fate, prisoners of this world and of flesh being and of this visible third dimensional reality, this simulatrix, as my friend Professor Truth calls it. But I mean, that's what it is. I mean, if you really look into how things are, it seems like we are incarnated into flesh form, which is a fallen way of being, and that we are placed, we are living in a world that is controlled by powers, principalities, the rulers of darkness, this wickedness in high places, these archonic interdimensional entities, which, like Oz behind the mask and from the shadows, seems to be pulling the strings and playing most as pawns on what is the chessboard of life and being. And even though we believe we are the determiners of our own fate, destiny, and design, it seems like there is a larger and deeper aspect to our being here, and that the whole role of humanity, the whole design, the whole purpose and reason for all of our being here over the thousands of years, at least the last 6,000, for the modern creation of going back to Adam and Eve and the fall of humanity and our placement into this world that it seems like we're at the end game and that things are accelerating to such degree that I mean it really seems like anything could just set the whole thing afire, could bring the dominoes tumbling down. Because I believe, we're at critical mass. Like, how much longer, how much further are they going to allow the debt of America to continue unencumbered? I mean, and how much more are the American people going to take with, schools and education and everything faltering? We don't even have good health care here. And most people, if you have some kind of devastating diagnosis to your life, that's the end of normality. That would be the um, the end of what's going on as far as what we see happening around us. And so, how much longer will the Ponzi scheme continue? That's the question. Um, Hello, Zaphod and Dharma, Heather, Skywalker, Comfortably Numb, Monster Up, and everybody else. And so I- I'm I'm just this is not even the topic for the evening. This evening I wanted to talk about the various layers and levels from their mistakes, their lessons. Why are we doomed seemingly to continuously cycle through these endless repetitions of wars and rumors of wars, and it doesn't seem in any way to make any sense. You would think that if we are truly a wise creature and an advanced race, that we would somehow be able to go beyond, at least surpass in some way the empires that have collapsed before us. And yet, here we are, 20 some $1 trillion in debt, the infrastructure of America just collapsing, roads, bridges, the whole electrical grid, everything as far as those things which have been created and that were made so long ago in order to enable America to be what it once was. It seems like we're on the other side of the glory days, that now we are witness to the crumbling of the empire. And so, welcome everybody. It's good to see you, Sister Kathy and Monster Mishivu Daku. It's been a while, brother. It's good to see you. George, I believe that's George Spain. Zippy, Mr. Rowe, always a pleasure, brother. And those that aren't in the immediate chat scroll, I know Link and Blues Girl and everybody else, Patrick, all the others that are normally here, know that, I appreciate all of you as far as the friendship and the collaboration, the welcome will and the dialogue, our introspection together as we journey into um just the current events of what's going on in the world. And I know that a lot of you, like myself, you've come to conclusion in having looked into and investigated the rhetoric of this supposed
Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Most are afraid of unknown depths, skirting shores thinking world flat, and with the island girls in celebration of new religion. Nobody led me or said this way. I sailed alone on makeshift raft with wind as companion. Fate for deliverance, confidence enough to assess new disposition. Seekers of lost paradise may seem fools to those who never sought the other worlds. Welcome to Momentary Zen with Zen Garcia. Visit www.fallenangels.tv. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
My friends and I come from far Arden with words dangled like jewels for your careless pleasure. To tell you about the grand highway crowded with lovers and searchers and leavers, so eager to please and forget. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen here on Revolution Radio, and I thank you for taking the time to join both Kathy and I as we peruse all things esoteric and trying to help you to make sense of and understand the insanity of the world at large and um, why it is that things seemingly don't make sense in the whole as far as the new age rhetoric of our moving on to a golden age and our being at the height and the culmination of technology and advancement as far as humanity, and why is it that the world is still just split apart by wars and enmity and insanity and catastrophe and chaos? Why haven't we somehow moved on, surpassed this, um, these negative characteristics and constraints? How is it that we are continuously repeating the things that have devastated previous cultures and ages and peoples? Why haven't we learned of what are the upper heavens in relation to the various different patriarchs and prophets that have been taken up into them and brought before the Most High God? That I wanted to share some insight into that as topic and subject, since people are asking me about it. But I can't just ignore, what's going on in the world. We got the whole dog and pony show of the two-party system and the electoral process, which, for those of you that have invested a lot of time and effort into all of that, um, I mean, if you haven't even figured out that that is all just an illusion, that we don't have truly any part or any say in who gets elected or even who really is paraded before us as candidate. It's that in of itself is sad that most people actually believe and still think that we're a republic or even a democracy, even though we weren't created as a democracy. We're created as a republic where the supposed representatives are supposed to you know represent the will of the people, one person, one vote, which that's all just an illusion. Even the electoral college and all of that, I mean, there is no popular vote. um and then you have things like we had talked about not even long ago. We did a show, welcome Link and Brother Chairbear and Blasphemous. um we did a show, I think it was last Tuesday or 2 Tuesdays ago. I'm a guest host. I'm a guest on Brother Kenneth's show where we do roundtable, and Kathy's with us, and Jackie and Charles. Um, and we discussed different topics. And last week we were talking about the narrow window that we are in right now, from that stretches from April 19th through the 1st of